Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we delve into the mystery and healing power of sound. Before we do that, I want to just comment on a couple of things. Today, we want to take a break from world events and update you on some of the issues that are pertaining to Ubiquity University, which is the host of Humanity Rising. Today, many of you would have received a communication by email asking that you support financially the work that we're doing at Ubiquity. We've been operating for a very, very long time, many, many years. And occasionally we reach out to our community to ask them to support our efforts as we move to the next level of service and capacity. Today is the 899th day of Humanity Rising. Tomorrow will be the 900th day. If you think about all the effort that it's taken since the 22nd of May in 2020, when we started in the depths of the pandemic, all the thousands of speakers that we've had across every conceivable issue that pertains to enabling humanity to rise at this critical moment in our evolutionary development. It's all been conducted by an extremely small group of people. Basically, Georg Bach, our technical director, and I, along with Stan Pokris and Shannon MacArthur, have been really supported by Katie Amrin, our director of operations, have been a really small group that day by day and week by week and month by month and now year by year have been bringing Humanity Rising to people in over 130 countries around the world. And we've been live streamed through the Sign partnership, over dozens, sometimes hundreds of live streaming partners, as we seek to convene conversations that really matter in our world and transform them into actions that make a difference. So today we want to ask you to respond to the email that you have received. I'll put the link in the chat box. We're trying to raise about $250,000 to increase our capacity at this moment when we're literally exploding with challenges that we need to address. One of the principal ones, as you all know, is that I'm now in Washington working with the New Paradigm Institute. In addition to all my responsibilities at Ubiquity, we've launched an extraterrestrial studies program. We have a call tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have over 170 people that are signed up that are interested in this ET studies program. It's an innovation in education. I don't know of any other academic institution anywhere where you can get a master's and doctoral degrees in extraterrestrial studies. So we're breaking new ground. We have all kinds of partnerships like with New Paradigm Institute, with which we're bringing an extraordinary amount of new, innovative learning. And we would like to reach out to our community for those of you who appreciate Humanity Rising. And those of you who have been taking any of the courses or attending any of our pilgrimages to Chartres, our upcoming pilgrimage to Teotihuacan, I just want to encourage you to support us as you can with large amounts or small amounts. All the support counts toward the capacity increase that we need to make, really to keep up with ourselves. Sometimes you can be so successful, you strain the infrastructure, both in terms of your hardware and your staff. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you and thank Georg and Stan and Shannon and Katie and others that have made Humanity Rising in particular an ongoing community service that we offer for free to everyone who's interested around the world. So thank you, everyone. And I'll be touching on this over the next days as the fundraising campaign unfolds. So welcome to Humanity Rising. We want to now turn to the whole mystery of sound, particularly the sound that's made by the human voice. You know, if you think about Humanity Rising, it's basically voices, human voices. You know, in the Gospel of John, it talks about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There's something about the voice. There's something more fundamentally about sound that both creates what is as it conforms to geometric shapes and arithmetical formula. Sound also, because it creates creation, is a powerful portal to both illumination and healing. Many traditions around the world, ancient and modern, have honored the efficacy of sound. And today we're going to hear from Shulamit Elson, who has been studying sound for many, many years. And in Shulamit's particular case, she really discovered the Kabbalah out of her own Jewish tradition as an extraordinary portal to the mystery and magic of sound. You know, in the beginning, God created the earth and all that is through sound. It's extraordinary, extraordinary, the power of sound. So Shulamit has been working in these areas for many, many years. She has a whole practice called MediSounds. She has ongoing seminars and courses for her community. And I've recently met Shulamit and was entranced by everything she was saying about her relationship with sound. So Shulamit, we want to welcome you to Humanity Rising. And so if you can turn on your video and take yourself off mute and join us, that would be wonderful. And we're going to start with Shulamit basically just telling us her story of discovery of the healing power of sound. And then she and I will dialogue for the balance of the time. And then Shulamit will join the after chat. So that'll be an opportunity for all of you to go deeper with her in a more informal setting. So Shulamit, welcome. And take whatever time you need just to tell us about your background and your story into sound.
Thank you for the very warm welcome. I really want to talk about the voice as, well, the human voice has consciousness in it and has incredible power, which we sometimes abuse or don't understand the depth of. So I would like to explore that today and inform people of how much power they have through their own voice used in specific ways. So my name is Shulamit, and my story, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I was expected at that time, as all young women were, to, get a decent education, but to marry and have a family and, and be in the home. I was very adventurous, and I was excited to explore the world. So when I got out of college, I went to Paris for a couple of years, and I met a man that I fell madly in love with, who I thought that I could not live without, and that I would die if I couldn't have him. We were together for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, but then it kind of fell apart, and I fell apart along with it. I came home and got very, very ill and had a disease that um, theoretically or couldn't be cured. And I looked forward to a shortened life and to ending on dialysis machines or transplants and such. So during the period that I was ill, which was approximately 4 years, I looked back on my life, which of course was very short, so there wasn't much to look back on, but I was trying to examine, what do I want to do? When am I? Who am I? What am I about? Because I've lost my way. And I began to, I was taking massive doses of cortisone so that my face was changed and my friends couldn't even recognize me. And I would look in the mirror and say, well, who am I if I'm not my face? And I decided that if I ever got better, I would try to find my path. And about 4 years into the illness, I had a spontaneous remission. And I never was ill again. I had taken the medicine for 2 years as instructed, but it was horrible medicine, terrible side effects, and I stopped. I decided it wasn't worth going on like that. So I was 2 years without the medicine when I had this spontaneous healing. That didn't leave me any better informed, by the way. I felt I felt full of life. I felt really full of life. I felt the life force in me when I got better, and there was great joy in it. But I was still stumbling around. I had started, when I came back from Europe, I had started work on Wall Street. Not because of any desire to work on Wall Street, but that's where I got a job. It wasn't so easy to get jobs in those days for women, and if you didn't want to be a secretary. And I worked at that for quite a while, and I'm smart enough, so I advanced. But really, I had no fundamental interest in it, and I felt like a square peg in a round hole. But that, again, did not give me any information. I didn't know how to proceed. I was still bewildered. I come from an Orthodox home, so I had, a lot of training in biblical studies, both in Hebrew and in English. And but I had decided to leave that. I started to lead a secular life. So I was lost, I guess like a lot of people. And I searched, but I searched the way you search when you don't know what you're looking for, which is basically stumbling around, talking to people, and occasionally getting some good guidance, very often just, listening and then moving on. And in my late 30s, I guess it was around then, I met my current husband, and he was very supportive of what I was trying to do, which of course was completely unformed. Had no idea, right? And I came across this book by Herbert Benson. He was a medical doctor out of Harvard, and he wrote a book about how to relax so that you would have less likely to have a heart attack. He called it the relaxation response. It was a big seller, and in it, it had a very simple meditative technique. So I started to do that. I started to follow his little technique, and I was amazed because I had immediate results. And I had visions. I have a lot of visions. A lot of different beings come into my sphere and speak to me or don't speak to me, not verbally, but through, I guess, a kind of telepathy. And it was very, very intriguing, but it was also quite scary. But during this time of meditation, I started to feel this desire to make sound. And the sounds were very powerful, but also completely incomprehensible to me because they weren't music. They weren't singing, they didn't have words. They didn't have, a feeling tone of romanticism, of whatever. I mean, it just were tones. But I was I don't know if I would say compelled, I was impelled to make these sounds. So I started to make them. At that time, we were living in an apartment where the living room was, shared the corridor, the hallway, where generally everybody walked. So I would go into the bedroom because I was afraid I'd be arrested, and I would practice these sounds. They were very strong, and I got that they meant something very deep. But I have to say that first of all, I was very ambivalent, and I was also pretty scared. I introduced the sound to friends and acquaintances and whatever as being really fantastic, but really being very weird, which of course got me the ambivalent response that I was myself projecting. But my husband, was doing well, and I was able to quit my job and pursue this path. And I did. I pursued it for 30 years or more, following it wherever it took me, and gradually gaining confidence and becoming more sure of myself. I think the two things I learned was, one, I had faith because I was able to pursue something that I didn't really understand the purpose of. And the second was that I had courage. Why did I have courage? I mean, courage to me is defined as the opposite of fear. If you're an agoraphobic and you never leave the house, crossing the threshold takes courage. It doesn't take courage for me to do that because I don't have those issues. But doing this work in public, in front of other people, pushed me beyond my fear. And in a sense, it was a courageous step. I began to embody this work that I was studying. And I started to do it with other people, with small groups, tentatively. And then at some point, I traveled the world with it. I certainly taught in England and in Spain and in India and in Singapore. I was all over the place. And I did that for about 7 years. And then I stopped doing it for no particular reason. I just, started to work more from home. And of course, I've taught here in the United States at Esalen and
Shulamit,
yes.
I really apologize, but many people are having challenges hearing you.
Oh dear.
So maybe
Okay.
you can get closer to your computer or closer to your mic.
Do I have to start from the beginning? Wait a second.
No, no, no.
Okay. All right. All I see is a closed captioning transcript is being
Yeah,
generated.
that's a little better. If you could just speak up, that would be.
Yeah, I speak softly. Wait a second. I'll pull it close to me. Is that better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay. All right. My volume is turned up to the maximum. So, just to recap a little bit, since I lost people along the way. I had a journey in which I was given the gift of sounds, sounds that had no meaning, sounds that were vibrational in nature, that had no attempt to persuade anybody of anything, that had no dogma attached to it, that had no reasoning attached to it. And these sounds spoke to me and to other people at the core level of their being. And I gradually overcame my fear, my shyness, to do this work publicly. My original gift came from the heavens. In my tradition, there's something called a magid, which just means a teller. So I was directed from unseen forces, beings that I couldn't name necessarily, to do this work. But at some point, I wanted to make it more concrete. I wanted to see if there was anything in the literature that would support what I was doing. Now, of course, this sound work, has been around since the dawn of time. But I didn't know anything about it. That doesn't mean it didn't exist. It exists in all the traditions. There are chanting traditions in all the traditions. Hinduism and Buddhism come to mind. but I just stuck with it, and I taught all over the world. And at some point, I found through a lot of effort, I have to say, that didn't go anywhere. I was trying to find stuff in the literature that supported what I was doing, and I couldn't find it. And I asked around, I asked a lot of people, and nobody knew what I was talking about. And ultimately, I ran across somebody, a gentleman in Israel, who, when I told him what I was looking for, he said, "Oh, that." And he pointed to a pile of books in the corner of his room because it was like trivial to him. You know, it was like saying, "Oh, that's where you left your umbrella," or something. I mean, I spent like 3 years trying to find this stuff, right? Well, it's written in Aramaic. It's really hard to get to. It's very hard to get translated. It's in the Zohar, but it's also in a book called The Dots, the Book of the Dots, the Book of the Vowel Points, written by Joseph Gekatia in the 13th century, which describes how the different aspects of the tree of life are associated with different specific vowel sounds. Okay, so now I had that, and I could say there were actually other people, people with much greater respect and admiration than I myself had, you know, people who were known, and I could quote them. But more importantly, it gave context to what I was trying to do, because I was, you know, the sounds themselves, I mean, we're creatures of meaning. We have to put it in some form. Anyway, I just proceeded. I know this was supposed to be about my journey, so I just proceeded with this work, teaching individuals and groups. I wrote a book called Kabbalah of Prayer, Sacred Sounds in the Soul's Journey. I worked continuously, and it deepened my practice and deepened my connection and deepened my compassion. And certainly I have had, like anybody who's lived as long as I have, my disappointments and my tragedies. And the only thing I can say about the tragedies is I wasn't protected from it by doing this work, but it did allow me a kind of grace in going through it, an understanding that I was connected to something larger than myself, and which allowed me to weep, but not to fall into bitterness or despair. So the sounds do not require any musical ability. They require intention. And the sounds have taken me personally on an incredible journey and have kept my spirit young. And they're really incredibly beautiful. And they're basically pretty simple. So I hope that you've heard some of my story. I don't know how much people have missed. My background enabled me to read this literature and benefit from it. But just finally to say that the difference between the work that was written about in the 13th century, which was also part of an oral tradition that had been not written about for centuries past, was the beginning for me, because it was very discreet. It said this sound is associated with this emanation on the tree of life. But what I did was combine the sounds so that it's possible to use them for physical healing, for emotional awakening and healing, and for spiritual growth. And above all, to feel a connection to a wider reality of which we are all a part, and to feel that in a sustaining way. So, Jim, I
Thank you.
turn it over to you. I'm sorry about my lapses. I'll move it closer. Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I think we caught everything that you said, Shulamit. So thank you for that. I was interested when you were talking about your illnesses and your lostness, and then how sound began to just sort of emerge in your consciousness. And I'm just wondering, was there a particular instance and a particular occasion where something happened and all of a sudden you began to realize that you had to track sound? I mean, tell us a little bit more about that
No, well,
discovery.
I have to say that there were like one or two occasions where I heard somebody make a tone, like randomly, right? And really got pulled by it. Like, what is that? What is that? Why is that so powerful? But then, I didn't have any context for it, and so I didn't think much more about it. I mean, these things are mysterious. I don't really know. I if I had to, make my own story or draw my own conclusion, I mean, it could be completely wrong, but I feel like this is what I came in to do. That I knew this in the depth of my soul before I emerged on this planet.
Yeah.
I think that this work is essential for this time. We have so much information, we have so much knowledge, but we have very little wisdom. And we don't know how to, we're very involved with our own identity and our correctness and our righteousness and our betterness than other people or whatever. And these sounds break through all that. They get you to your core.
Do you want
So
to give us a kind of an example or some just uh,
I will. I will.
do some toning or some sounding and explain the different vowels and how they work, and just show us what you've discovered.
Okay. So to talk about the different vowels and how they work is kind of a large discussion, but I can give a little sample. But in terms of, I can make the sounds. I give a meditation every Sunday if people want to join. It's free, where you can hear the sounds. But I'll give a short sample of the sounding. Um, but I want to remind people that this is something that everybody can do because you don't have to be an opera star. This is a kind of prayer or a connection, that we all have. It's our birthright. We just forgot how to do it. Okay. So the basic idea is for you to relax and receive. I make the sounds to the energy of the group and the energy of the day.
Now, do these sounds come spontaneously, Shulamit, or is this part of a sequencing that you've learned from the tradition?
Well, no, I haven't learned it from the tradition. Um, the tradition basically says, what is written anyway, is what I said. It's like there are 10 emanations on the tree of life. The tree of life is a ladder of, it can be studied as a ladder of spiritual ascension. And this is also, there are Christian Kabbalists as well as Jewish Kabbalists. I mean, there are mysteries hidden in the tree. And this particular technique, if you want to call it, or intuition, is basically said, at least in the ancient literature, this is a sound that relates to the heart. This is, to compassion. This is a sound that relates to spiritual attainment. This is a sound that relates to grounding. This is a sound that relates to integration. So there are 10 of these, right? But I've put them together. So I feel myself like a violinist in a way. I'm the master of the technique, but I'm also the servant of it. So I have to follow it where it takes me. I have to listen to what's needed. At the same time, that of course I'm doing it. I'm controlling it to that extent, right? So it's both. But I do know, for example, here there were a few sounds that I used, but I really followed my instinct, if you want to call it that, my guidance. One was to awaken the connection between us and the higher realms. The other was to settle us in a place of integration. And then also there was a sound for grounding. So there was several sounds, but they were all mingled together. And the basic idea, I hope, depending on how you received it, is to remind you tonally of what you're connected to and who you are at the deepest level, a being that can ascend to the heights, but also who lives on the ground, who lives in a world where there's a lot of conflict and there's a lot of pressures. And somehow to walk through that minefield with a degree of inner peace is quite an accomplishment. But we can do it. And the sound educates our organs in a way. It's not talking to our brain. It's talking to our organs and to our vitality and to our connection at the deepest level. And when you can use it as a precursor to normal meditation if you do silent meditation, because it calms you quite a bit and allows you to enter into that meditation more easily. Or you can use it as a meditation in and of itself for specific goals. I mean, you can say, well, for example, the whole question of inner peace, that's a big deal. Big deal for everybody.
I'll say.
So, but this basically is saying at your solar plexus, which is kind of the center of your body, there is, this is the place where well, it's also the place of the stomach, right? Of trying to chew up everything that comes in and digest it. You can come to a place of peace there by making the sound, which basically admits that there are all of these pressures on us. We have our own ambivalences about everything. And we have the pressures from the outside world. And that's all pressing in, but it can still all be there, but we can still be at peace at the same time. It's like, you have all these balls in the air, you got to let them fall to the ground and rest. I don't think that peace is a permanent state. I think it's, you can be peaceful and then in another moment you can be very upset. I mean, there's all sorts of things going on, but you can feel it more often. In my book, I have a description of a process that you can use using the sound for the solar plexus, which is the rounded sound of O, and come to a place like, let's say, before you go to sleep, where you gotta let a lot of things go. Like, get a lot, you let them go for a few minutes, and just rest. gradually you train your system and you don't get so agitated about outside stuff. And you train your system and you become less ambivalent. Or maybe clearer, maybe clearer. You can get to a point where you can say, I really, really want this, but I know it's not good for me. And it's not good for the people around me and for my family. And you can get to a point where you say, I really want this, but so what? These other things are more important. And you could be calmer about it. So that the sound actually, it doesn't yell at you. It just resonates with the organs. It resonates with the center of the universe. I mean, everything vibrates. The cosmos, your whole body, all your organs, everything vibrates. So you're coming into a resonance, really. So you can. I mean, there's a lot to this, when you're
Well, give
trying.
us some
Go ahead.
examples, like you say, there's 10 sounds that
Right.
are associated with different forms of healing. Give us a couple of examples of, for
Okay.
example, in your awareness, what sound would correspond with resonance in the heart?
Ah.
Ah,
Ah.
and then the
Ah.
O is for the,
Yeah. Ah is associated with compassion because it's really the sound for wisdom. It's a wise man who knows compassion. Compassion is the secret to wisdom, actually. So the sound is ah, and before we finish, I want to show people how to do the sound for themselves because it's very, very powerful. It can help soothe pain. It can help soothe relationships. It can help you soothe yourself. And it makes just the quality of your life so much better. And you don't have to do it for 50 years to get your quality of life to be so much better. You really need to remember that when you have a choice between reacting and responding, if you choose responding, you can step back and remember to be compassionate. And I want to be specific about compassion. It's not empathy. It's not, I feel with the other person's pain. It's not saying, I forgive all terrible behavior. It's not saying, I have to forgive all terrible behavior. It's not saying, I have to have terrible people around me. It's just saying that you recognize that you are in front of other human beings and they are troubled and they are ignorant and they are frightened, just like you are ignorant, frightened, and troubled. And you can feel a certain kind of love or compassion. And it just makes life easier. But anyway, so the ah for compassion, for the heart, the O for the solar plexus, the throat is A, which can be used to improve speech, for example, but also if you can make it high enough by lifting your tongue toward the roof of your mouth, you actually can feel the connection to the higher realms. So those are just a few. There's one, there are others. There's one for strength. There's one for judgment. There's one for,
what's the sound for judgment?
oh, it's tough. It's,
Yeah.
we all have judgment, we just shouldn't be extreme about it. Discrimination is what we need, not judgment. The ability to tell the difference, to be kind, to be merciful, even though we may have to judge. If you take judgment too far, it goes to war and violence and hatred.
Yeah.
So I'd like to refrain from that sound if you don't mind. But there are sounds for increasing your ability to have a vision of the future that you want to embody, and then to take that and to make that a reality. There are sounds for that. Because some of us are gifted with ideas and others are gifted with materializing those ideas. And it's nice if you can do it all in yourself because you have that capacity. It's just that some capacities are more developed than other capacities. And you also can find it in partners. I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, the illustration from the Bible is Moses and Aaron. Moses stuttered. He didn't want to do the job, So Aaron did everything. Aaron spoke for him, but Moses was the visionary. So, we find that in our partnerships, that our partners can, shore us up where we're weak, and we do the same thing for them. But all of these aspects, these 10 aspects, they're part of our nature. They're part of our capacity, and we can draw on them through the sound.
Mhm. Now, let me ask you about,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Let me ask you about your journey into the East, because what you were saying about the is remarkably similar to the ancient Hindu understanding of the Om as the primal sound of the universe. And of course, their mantras like the Om Mani Padme Hum or various others like that are all using sound for illumination and healing. So I just wonder, in your journey of learning, how much have you just focused exclusively on sort of the Jewish tradition or the Kabbalah? And how much have you been informed by, say, Eastern understandings of sound?
Well, I've been informed only in the sense that sound is universal, and it comes through the context of different cultures. I mean, the indigenous American indigenous tribes use sound in their ceremonies, with their dancing and so on. I mean, it's universal. Om, by the way, is one of the 72 names of God in the mystical tradition. Om is amazing, right? The difference between the other sounds and the Kabbalistic. Wait, well, let me stop here. In the Jewish tradition, I would say that nobody has paid attention to sound in its relationship to the Sefirot, to the emanations, for at least 1,000 years. So I want to
Very strong
say
statement.
I would. The Jewish people keep their books, right? They keep their books, and this book of Gikati is still around. But I mean, in my fancy, I think that maybe every 100 years, maybe 10 people read it. So it's still available, but no, nobody. Jewish people like to talk words, right? They're not. They don't. No, they're not particularly aware of this tradition, but it is in our tradition. But it's hidden and mystical, so it's not used.
So you've really made a deep study of the esoteric Jewish tradition about sound. That's really your domain, your pathway.
Right. Listen, I was raised in an Orthodox home, but it was a modern Orthodox, and it was rational. Kabbalists were supposed to be crazy, and you were told that you never get involved with the Kabbalah because it drives people crazy. And it was scoffed at. So it was not, and women, are not allowed to even touch the Kabbalah, and men only after they're 40, and have children and families and stuff. Keep them grounded, keep them from flying away. And so there are really very few women who have been involved in study of this kind. But I'm my particular bias, if you want to call it a bias, is I'm only interested in how it improves people's lives. I'm not interested in the abstraction. I want to know how can this be applied to improve people's lives. Let me step back. How can this be applied to improve my life? I mean, that's how it started out in my life. What I was looking for, how could I improve my life? And it's of course many people on the call know this is a journey, and a journey of a spiritual journey, or a journey to come to inner peace, or to enlightenment, however you describe it, or to an awakening, is very difficult. And there's a lot of fear that comes up because your ego's involved. And one of the things that happens if you achieve as you achieve higher states of consciousness is that your ego has to take a back seat. And it doesn't like that. and it fights really, really hard. So you really feel that you might die if you proceed, because your ego tells you that you're going to die. Your ego tells you if you give up your fear of abandonment, you will die. If you give up your fear of crowds, you will, whatever. It's saying, I am the sole protector of you. I protect you. What happens in the course of life is it starts out as a guardian, but it ends up as a guard, kind of like a fascist guard, at the perimeters saying, don't step right, don't step left. And in my case, doing something that, first of all, was a little forbidden. And then, as a woman, and then not even it's a mystical thing that you're not supposed to touch. But also then to do it out in the world where it wasn't accepted so easily. I mean, all of this was scary. So I had to face my fear. If this work did anything for me, it was probably the most profound thing is that I had to face fear.
Mm.
Because I needed to do this. This is my work. This is who I am in a sense. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I don't believe so much on an identity, but I'm here to do this job. All right, I'm here to do this job. And at the point that we're at in our history right now, which is looking very somber, I believe we have a real shot at creating something really beautiful for the future. But the first thing is that people have to maybe step back from their fierceness of their opinions and feel the connection to a greater reality. And I'm a person of faith, but you don't have to be. You can feel it in nature. You can, you're part of something greater. You're only here for a short time and you're part of something greater. And your life has meaning because you give it meaning. And so this is what I do. This is the work that I feel is important to get out there because it I guess what I really want to say most strongly is that each of us has incredible power in their voices. Now, obviously we weave stories. We're storytellers. And we've been telling stories since the dawn of time by, campfires and so. But we still tell stories all the time, and we listen to stories, even on Netflix or whatever. We're constantly listening to stories. And the words shape our reality. And that's a good thing, except it also narrows our gaze quite a bit. So what if we got really quiet and made these vibrational tones felt, not because I say so, but because you feel yourself, this connection to a greater reality, a sustaining, abundant, loving reality, that maybe we could drop the way we are for the past 8,000 years or maybe longer, I don't know, and come to a higher level of consciousness. And there are many, many prophecies from different religions that predict this, by the way. And it could be, the Hopis or whatever coming into the new world. I forget whether it's the fifth world or whatever. In the Jewish tradition, these are the end times that result in this renewal. And there are many other traditions like this. So,
Rita Marsh is asking a very interesting question about whether you have any experience or knowledge about using sound for conflict, different parts of the world, like, what is happening in Gaza or other troubled spots. What do you know about applying sound for peaceful purposes in areas of conflict?
some years ago, I was in Israel and I went over to the Palestinian villages, and I taught, well, actually, ostensibly, I was teaching the kids how to sound, but the parents were there, and they loved it. They loved it. So I think, actually, that was my original idea, but I didn't get a lot of receptivity, shall we say, when I tried. But that was my original idea. I went to Israel and I was really working with sound to help people. I was there during a very bad time when everybody was off the streets. The Israelis never get off the streets. As soon as there's a bombing, they're always back. I was there during that time. There was nobody coming into Israel. Everything was blocked at the airports and etc. I think there were like 2 or 3 people there. Anyway, I taught it. I taught it to the Arabs. I taught it to the Jews, and I think it had an impact. But listen, you need a lot of willingness, I guess. I mean, if people are frightened for their lives, or if they're trying to survive, maybe this isn't high on the list. But I think it's very, very helpful. I think it's extraordinarily helpful. And I think that is why, of course, I absolutely cannot say this with any certainty. I just have to say that I believe that that is why I was given these sounds and why they're coming out in this time for the world. This is something, of course, there are people who are chanting in many different traditions, and there are people all over the world right now who are working toward peaceful solutions in small groups everywhere according to their faith. But this work transcends boundaries, and you don't need any particular requirement to do it well. You don't have to be able to make your mind silent, which is some people can do that, and some people are completely turned off by the prospect of having to sit quietly. You can access it with your voice, no matter how so-called bad your voice is, how not gifted your voice is. This is just a form of prayer. It's a form of, it's your soul crying out. So it's not, you don't need anything special to do it. So individuals can do this. And of course, if you can do it in a group, it's fantastic. I'm always sad that you can't, I do a lot of my work on Zoom because I have a lot of international students as well. I'm always sad that we can't do group sounding because Zoom just distorts it and you just have, noise. But people can form small groups, and you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be an opera singer. All you have, which is all you ever have, is your intention. Your intention combined with a tool, which in this case is your voice. Rudolf Steiner said in the future times, babies would be born from the voice, that this is a spiritual place. And look how we tarnish it with our speech and with our anger and with our hatred and with our separation. You can express love, you can express hatred, but you can also, make sounds which really don't ask anything of you and give so much.
Now, let me ask you a couple more questions, and I think we would love to hear more about whatever practices you want to offer us or anything else like that. But in the Kabbalistic tradition, is there an original sound? Is there a primal sound like in the Hindu tradition, or I would say Eastern tradition? The primal sound is the sound Om. And in their way of understanding it, the contains all the sounds of the universe. Therefore, it's the primal sound. In the Kabbalistic tradition, is there an equivalent to the Om?
In the, I would say, let me just say that in the Zohar, there is a description of the creation of the world through sound. But it's not the Om, it's very specific, there are very specific sounds. There are 3 of them, but they're like seeds that created the world.
And what are those 3 seeds? What do they sound like?
Well, I can only...
No, I understand.
Sometimes
We're not asking you to create the universe.
Oh, wait, I have a chance. I'm going to redo the whole thing.
Might not be a bad
fighting
idea.
Here. There's too much fighting. I'm changing it. Rather than deal with the specifics, the interesting thing to me was just that it was said, and of course it's hidden, in the. I mean, you can look in the story of the creation, for example. the creation story, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, that's, simple in English, but in Hebrew it's not. Every word, every letter has importance. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the first word, Bereshit could also be barashit, which is he created six directions, up, down, side to side, back and forth. So there's mysteries in every single word and every single letter, which, it's not me, but scholars of the Kabbalah, they
Sure.
pour over every letter and whatever. I'm giving you the received knowledge. But the sounds so the world was created that way. And this is something the Hindus certainly have a very strong tradition in, and the Buddhists are coming from the Hindus, so that's the same idea. Well, you don't create the world with the sounds, but we create our world with our sound, with our thought, with our speech. Our immediate world is completely created by that.
Sure.
So so I can't create the world for you. I can just make those sounds that I made before. But what I can do though is tell you that you can make certain sounds with intention that can have a very critical effect on your life. It can improve all your relationships. It can make you really be compassionate and loving to yourself, because we're so hard on ourselves. My God, if we
Yeah.
told people half the things that we dump on ourselves, they wouldn't believe how cruel we are, right? So you start with the self and you begin to generate compassion, which is very, very hard. And then you do it for others. Some people have much easier time doing it for other people that they love. And sometimes they have an easier time doing it for people that they really have trouble with. But you can develop a series of practice, which is based on just generating compassion. And you can see your life change. I don't mean that, it's not dramatic. It's just that you feel so much better and everybody around you feels so much better. So it's not like, you rush to judgment. Instead, you rush to compassion,
Sure.
and you stop. And
Sure.
it just makes your life better. So anyway, it's in the mysteries. It's the stuff is hidden in the mysteries. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that it's time for sound to come out. I don't have agreement from the rabbis around me. I mean, I think it's pretty unusual and odd, maybe. But this is the work that I do and the work that I've been committed to for a long time. And I've seen it on some occasions heal illness, not as, it's not something that I would promote it as such, but it can occasionally heal. It can certainly heal your inner being. And to the question before, it can begin to heal the world.
Well, we've had some sessions, with Deanna Rice, for example, has brought people on that regularly use sound and vibration for healing purposes of all kinds, emotional as well as physical. I have this. There was a guy on, I forget his name now, but with a tuning fork, and just creating the vibration and holding it up against different parts of your body creates a resonance with sound. And in some of the sounds you can't even hear. It's just frequency. It's just vibration. So it's a very I think potent way of bringing healing to the body. And as you probably know, there's more and more medical techniques in hospitals that are using sound waves for various modalities of healing.
Yeah,
So you're on to something very, very profound.
Now, Edgar Casey said in the future all healing would be done with sound.
Yeah,
I
no doubt.
The one thing I want to emphasize, because there's all kinds of sound. There's passive sound, like when you're using the tuning fork, you're the recipient, so to speak. But with this practice, you are
Yeah,
using
you're
your own
generating
voice.
the sound.
You're
Yeah,
generating. It's not
yeah,
passive. So you are creating a different kind of reality for yourself and discussion with yourself about the nature of reality. And you're connecting to realms that you couldn't connect to before. And you
yeah.
can communicate because of that to these realms because they don't speak necessarily in the same language that you do. So, it's you can,
Mm.
telepathy becomes more easily accessible because your mind is quiet, but also because it's just very, when you think about animals like a dog, for example, I mean, I don't have a dog, but we talk to our dogs, right? Have conversations with them and so on. But they actually pick up emotional stuff. They're very
Of
attuned,
course.
right? And it's not through the words that they're picking it up, for sure. They're picking it up because they feel something. So we can communicate to other forms of life using this. And certainly I have a lot of visions, so I get a lot of information from the other realms during these visions, not through speech, um, but through thought.
Beautiful. Well,
So,
Shulamit, is there anything you'd like to close out with? Do you have any
yeah, well, let me just
practices that you'd like
let
to
me
share with
teach one
us?
sound. Let me teach one sound because it's a
Sure.
simple sound and it's beautiful. So the ah sound is the sound that generates compassion. You can feel compassion for yourself or for your friends or for your family or for the world or whatever, and you can feel compassion for parts of your body. So you can send the sound to soothe your body. This is a very wonderful sound. It's on, if you think of a tree, it's on the central column of the tree of life. So it's in the place of great stability. The tree has a trunk and it also has branches, but the trunk and the branches are less stable, but the trunk is very stable. So the thought is to generate compassion. And again, that just means recognizing yourself as a human and recognizing other beings as humans and knowing that you have a shared experience and shared destiny, even though your worlds might be different. The sound is ah. We put our hand over our hearts because you want to pitch the sound through your heart. You want to pretend that your heart is your mouth. And you can make the sound so that you feel the vibration, hopefully, underneath your hand. You might go a little high or a little low, but it won't be as effective as if you go straight under your hand. And you can try a few, and then, I know we don't have an interactive aspect here, but in the follow-up afterwards, I can talk about it. But put your hand over your heart and make a sound of ah. As long as your breath lasts, you're private in your own place, so you don't have to worry about how you sound. So just do it as long as your breath lasts. You can't imitate my breath because I do circular breathing and I last a long time. Okay, so. So try it. Try three. So take a moment and absorb how you're feeling.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I should say that if you do that sound in the morning and at night, just for as long as you feel like it, don't push yourself. You can do it. It's good to do it longer, but it's good to also do it. So don't make yourself do it before you get tired of it. And you can do it whenever you feel like it because it can't hurt you and it can only improve everything. If you want a description of different sound practices, you can find it in my book, Kabbalah of Prayer, Sacred Sounds and the Soul's Journey, which is available on Amazon. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Shulamit. Thank you very much. This has been an excellent discourse on the Kabbalistic understanding of the human voice. Normally, we think of it, this kind of wisdom coming from the East, but you brought it to us from the West. So I'm deeply grateful for that. You rounded out my knowledge. So thank you.
You're welcome. And let's keep rising, huh?
So thank you, everyone.
We have to counterbalance the negative energy. Yeah.
Totally. So thank you, everyone. That'll bring us to a close for today. You can join Shulamit in the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. Stan has just put it in, and then you receive the link in your Zoom reminder for today if you scroll down on that link. And then we'll see everybody here tomorrow for our next session. Our 900th session will be tomorrow here on Humanity Rising. Thank you, Shulamit. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.